sounds like a bunch of boring legal terminology, but I'm genuinely interested. Like, when do you file a restraining order? Like, what defines that boundary?
And I mean, sure, you can declare that, you're not allowed within a certain distance of another person. But how does anyone really enforce that? Like, suppose you've filed a restraining order against a stalker. Do you like have some piece of technology on you that searches or like scans your perimeter and makes sure that the person isn't anywhere near you? Or is it akin to, any other situation where it's only really wrong if you get caught?
It is like having a person on you at all times sounds like a waste of. Sharma, are you recording?
Yes, he is.
Damn. Okay. So it seems that Sharma,
No.
well, not Sharma, Keshav is fulfilling the role of Cyclops today from the X-Men.
Indeed.
So, yeah, since we're recording, Sharma, why don't you take it away?
Okay, so in the 1800s, and this is about the continuum hypothesis. In the year 1873, this mathematician dude, big brain guy, called George Cantor, he proposed the statement saying that a line is made up of indefinable number of points. And since in that time it wasn't that obvious, he termed this as infinity. And then after 5 years, he started saying that real number sets and natural number sets taken in infinite points are going to be different, because real numbers include rational numbers, irrational numbers, integers, and basically everything except imaginary numbers. Whereas natural numbers, they are a subset of real numbers. So he said that the infinity of real number and the infinity of natural number will be different. And so he said that infinity does not follow the normal rules of subtraction, addition, division, and whatever. So now he proposed this theory, and to proving this, he wasn't able to. And when he was backing out, he said, okay, fine, since I can't prove it, I'll disprove it. And so when questions were raised on that, he wasn't able to prove that either. And so he left the theory there, and he termed this as continuum hypothesis. And so this mathematician called Hilbert, he put this in his list of basically solutions that you have to prove of 20th century.
Yeah, I've heard of those.
Yeah. And so another group of mathematicians, namely Paul Cohen and Kurt Gödel, they came up as a group and they said, okay, why not interpret this theory and let's try doing something. But midway, these people, their ideologies changed, their paths changed. And so they came to be known as the pluralist and the non-pluralist, whereas Paul Cohen was the pluralist. And he started saying that this thing cannot be proved. Fine. Whereas Kurt guy, he said that we have axioms to this. And he put these axioms to prove a lot of this continuum hypothesis, but he wasn't able to prove continuum hypothesis itself. Sad, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I'm just putting into a certain level of formality what Sharma just said, is that Gödel tried to construct proofs using axioms for primarily the continuum hypothesis, but like he never really succeeded, and he proved so much more. And while it sure sounds like we're trying to undermine the contributions of Kurt Gödel, but in no way are we trying to do so, because Kurt Gödel was really, really smart. I mean, that's an understatement for what he's contributed to modern mathematics. Yeah, but yeah, just to put into a certain degree of formality, one of the intuitive notions that George Cantor based his theory of sets on was what we call the continuum hypothesis. All right, and his idea of sets was based on two principles, right? The principles were basically extensionality and being comprehensive or comprehension, right? So extensionality basically is talking about the equivalence of two sets, right? Two sets are only said to be equal when they have exactly the same number of elements and the elements themselves are the same, right? But it's the second property of this Cantor's theory that raised a lot of problems and paved the way for much of modern set theory as we know it today. And this was basically the principle of comprehension. So Cantor was a mathematician who was obsessed with elegance in math, right? So elegance in mathematics is an all too familiar term, but generally what has happened is that sometimes, that this is not just applicable to math in general, this is applicable to the whole field of science. No matter how elegant a theory might be, if it doesn't agree with experimental result, it's not really true anymore, right? So this is what later happened to Cantor's principle of comprehension, which states that Cantor assumed that if you could find a certain number of elements, like 2, 4, 6, and 8, that all satisfied a certain property. In this case, 2, 4, 6, and 8 are all even numbers. Then you could form a set of all these elements that satisfy said property, right? So in this case, it would be the set containing 2, 4, 6, 8. The underlying property being that all of these are even numbers, right? But this raised a lot of problems in the mathematical community. Primarily, there was this person, his name was Russell, right? And Russell did what we call a very big brain move, right? Mm-hmm. He was like, okay, Cantor assumed that any property can satisfy a set. So Russell assumed, well, let's assume a certain number of elements that aren't the members of a set. Since all the elements are satisfying a property, according to the comprehension principle laid down by Cantor, they have to be elements of a set or members of a set. But we've made the assumption in the beginning that they're not really members of a set. So that was the problem, one of the underlying problems with Cantor's set theory. But Cantor also did something really cool, right? And like Sharma said, Cantor propagated something called the continuum hypothesis, which is like one of the unsolved problems in modern mathematics, right? So the continuum hypothesis raises into question one of the biggest stumbling areas we've had in math, which is generally dealing with infinity, right? So what Cantor did is he said, all right, let's assume a certain line, all right? Now, the number of points on said line is infinite, right? Because you can keep going smaller and smaller and you can keep drawing points. So the number of points in any line is infinitely many, right? Akin to that, Cantor said that, well, we know that the set of real numbers, like Sharma said, has infinitely many elements. And people will also admit that the set of natural numbers has infinitely many elements, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Nobody will disagree when I say that the set of real numbers has a greater number of elements than the set of natural numbers, right? Because real numbers contains integers, whole numbers, natural numbers, irrational numbers, everything except a complex or an imaginary number, right? And well, in the context of Cantor's explanation, he used whole numbers, but natural numbers and whole numbers are almost the same thing. Natural numbers just don't include zero, right? So he said, well, we assume that, or we say that both the set of real numbers and the set of natural numbers have infinitely many elements. But it is also true that the set of real numbers has a greater number of elements. So he proved that there is no level of infinity in between these two different degrees of infinity. And this concept of different degrees of infinity is still like one of the most puzzling and confusing areas in mathematics. And Cantor assumed and tried to state that, well, there's no level of infinity between these two. In his attempts to prove it, he didn't really succeed. And he tried to disprove it, but he didn't really succeed. So that was one of the failures. I'm not going to say failures because Cantor was responsible for set theory in general, because he was one of the few people who started this entire field that we have so much to thank for today. But it was one of the, it really was one of the stumbling areas in Cantor's intuitive elegant yet unfortunately mistaken theory? Well, that doesn't answer my question. I wanted to know about the applicability of a restraining order, right? And in most legal dramas where this forms a part of the premise, right? There's always this particular phrase that I've heard that I've always been puzzled by, right? That I will neither confirm nor deny my statement, or anything that you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
Wait, Laksh. But then, doesn't that sound like a mathematical proof to you? Like, genuinely, most proofs in math start like that. And then, if you keep breaking them again and again and again, you reach a point where that statement does not require any further proofs. And we call such statements as axioms. And these axioms can be put together in like many systems, and it can form like, there are many systems like, there's something called a piano system of arithmetic, or it can even, you can talk about the Zermelo-Fraenkel set theory, which also starts with a big set of all these axioms. So the only problem with axioms is that, how can you say that an axiom does not require any more proof? Because it is not a mathematically rigorous proof that is supporting this statement. Or is this that, can you just say that this whole theorem is proved based on such a statement, which does not end up having any proof? Like, you cannot just prove something like all right angles are 90 degrees. Can you just prove it mathematically?
No,
right?
If you can, please send in your names. You would win a Fields Medal. We would like to know the name of that person.
I mean, this never mind me. I mean, I just feel insecure about what I just said, and I think it's wrong. But then, come on, I don't know.
Now, Soham, everyone has their own insecurities. Like, you're insecure about your explanation. I'm insecure about my voice. Laksh practically has imposter syndrome. And Adi is insecure about how much he studies, despite the fact that it's all that he really does. What I'm getting at is everyone has something they feel they're lacking, something that would, in a way, make them feel complete. But it's not complete? Any consistent formal system F within which a certain amount of elementary arithmetic can be carried out. Now, you're probably wondering, slow down, why you speaking so fast? And secondly, what did you just spew? The string of words that just came out of your mouth, do they have any meaning to them whatsoever? And in fact, they do. What I just stated was Gödel's first incompleteness theorem. And there are two of these theorems. They're immensely important, and they're not just mind-boggling. They also shattered all dreams and hopes that 20th century mathematicians had. Now, Gödel's incompleteness theorems basically just destroyed any assumptions that the 20th century mathematicians had made regarding consistency and completeness. Now, what are consistency and completeness? Now, consistency, or rather a consistent theory, basically means if one uses classic deductive logic, one should not be able to arise at a contradiction. And completeness basically means that if a theory is complete, then for every formula and its negation, one should be able to derive them simply using the axioms of the theory.
But dudes, wasn't our discussion on restraining orders incomplete?